Betty Lau, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. This is such an important topic that I'm really grateful. My colleagues and I are really grateful that you and Matt are offering us this opportunity to give voice to community.
Yeah. So, what is the concern among the community about this issue?
The main concern is that as people have realized what the impacts of a gigantic infrastructure will be, people are feeling very, very uneasy about the process in which it is being revealed. For example, I myself have been attending Sound Transit meetings since about 2018 with a couple other friends. And we really did not understand the difference between 4th Avenue and 5th Avenue. And when things started getting deeper into it, we were confused. And so I went to an architect friend and I said, look at these options. Which one is the best for Chinatown International District? And he said, 4th Avenue shallow. And I said, why? And he said, have you ever been on a major infrastructure site? And of course I hadn't. Mm-hmm. I had seen images on TV, but I really didn't understand what it was about. So he explained it to me. And then I went, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I heard the words, it'll all be underground. So I thought nothing above ground would be disturbed. But as I attended more meetings, asked more questions, then Brian Chow and I decided we have to alert the community to these unknown impacts, because we are not only engineers, people in construction, architects would understand those impacts.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting that the latest version of the sound, okay, so there were 5 options presented to the community. I think 3 were on the 4th Avenue side, 2 were on the 5th Avenue side. Is that correct? Or was it the reverse of that?
No, one option is no build.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, yeah.
And then the 4th Avenue is the only option on 4th Avenue. However, for 5th Avenue, there are 3 horrible options.
Well, the one that
horrible.
The one that surprised me the most, and it came up late, was the one where they were going to tear down the block where Ping's Dumpling House is, and right near the China Gate, tearing that building down to create a station that enters that building. And that came out of nowhere to me. And that, how disruptive is that? I mean, that seems to be their preferred option.
Yes. That's not the only building. The small building where Carpet King used to be will also be torn down. Where Bank of America is will be torn down. And the old Wajumaya, the blue tiled building and the parking lot, it's now called Nagomi Plaza. All of that will be taken and torn down. So the extent of property going out of the hands of people of color into this, whoever's in Sound Transit, is horrendous.
Yeah. Well, the other factor is people think, okay, they're just going to raise the buildings and be done with it and start building the transit. This project is expected to last a minimum of 10 years.
Whoa.
Yes, depending on the option. So supposedly the least intrusive or the least of the horrible options will be around 6 years. And then for 4th Avenue, it'll take a minimum of 11 years.
And it's just not that area that's affected. It effectively will block off the entire lower portion of the CID, correct? Because it limits traffic coming into that area.
Yes, traffic will need to be diverted. But the insidious thing about it is that I noticed early on there were certain biases and omissions of information given to us. And the more Brian and I raised questions, well, we'll answer that later. Well, of course, later never comes. And so we became more and more suspicious until we felt that we had to sound the alarm and alert as many people in the community as possible. And then beyond that, because Chinatown International District is a regional draw for visitors and tourists, and Asian, and is the center of the Asian community, we had to quickly get a plan together to inform people. And so here we are today.
Now, there's a number of groups that usually are against each other in Chinatown, right?
Exactly.
In the CID.
Right.
But for this moment, there is some cohesion. People all want the same thing. What is it that the community wants to happen? What is your preferred option? What is the community's preferred option?
In the best of all worlds, it wouldn't happen on 4th or 5th, but we have to be practical. The voters approved it. I think it was around 2015 or so. And so we have to make a choice. And the lesser of two evils would be 4th Avenue, because it would not have direct impacts on the businesses and residents that are in Chinatown International District.
But wouldn't it take longer on 4th?
Absolutely. One of the discrepancies is that it became quite obvious that Sound Transit's preferred alternative, even though they say they have not made a decision, their preferred alternative is 4th Avenue. And I have examples of that. So their metrics for determining that 4th Avenue would be a better way to go are number of cars that go down there that would have to be diverted, number of businesses that would be displaced, and number of residents.
So, Betty, you obviously have spent a lot of time, trying to investigate
Yes.
all of this, keep track of what's going on. What is, or has Sound Transit been doing to communicate to the community? I mean, you're one person that has decided to take the time to really follow all this, but is Sound Transit doing enough, or have they been doing enough to alert the community about the project?
No. In fall 2021, Sound Transit, I was really excited. Sound Transit put out the call for membership in the community advisory groups from each of the sub areas. And there was one, they call it segments. And our segment was called CID SODO. We got lumped in with SODO.
Yeah.
SODO includes Pioneer Square. And by CID, I mean Chinatown, Japantown, and Little Saigon. And I called up some friends. I said, hey, let's get on this committee because we need to get Zhonghua Benevolent Association involved. It's the major organization for the Chinese community. Friends of Japantown wants to be involved. And since I have friendships there, they said, go for it and just tell us what's going on and so forth. So then I filled out 3 applications, one for myself and two other people. only one of us was accepted onto the committee. And I never received a rejection letter. So I kept emailing, what happened? Am I on? Am I on? Should I go to the first meeting? And no one responded until the Asian Weekly ran an article saying I was ghosted. And then I got oh, Betty, nobody saw your application. It must be stuck somewhere.
Jeez.
Yes. And so they said, well, you could watch by YouTube, but you can't participate.
So who made the committee?
At first, Brian Chow, and then another friend who is African-American did not make it onto that committee until the second meeting, when they realized they had no African-Americans on that group. And they suddenly realized he's African-American. So then they issued him the invitation to join the group. And the reason why he should be on the group is because his grandparents owned the Alps Hotel, which is on King Street. So he has a legacy interest in the area.
So what is it? So what is it that you want Sound Transit to hear from the community? What do you want to tell them?
They need to develop other alternatives for 4th Avenue. They have been pushing 4th as the best way to go. One, it's cheaper. 2, it's more convenient, because then and they said, and if you guys being people in the CID community, we're going to divert those 30,000 cars down King Street, Weller, and you won't like it. So that's basically their message to us. And I said, what about diverting it to the waterfront or splitting it between Pioneer Square and us? Why does it all have to come on us?
So I want to go back to the advisory committee. Is there no one that is Asian or representing the Chinatown International District on those committees?
Now that is really interesting. You can go back and watch the recordings of those meetings, and you could see the only Asians that are on there are Brian Chow, and there was another person, a woman. So the representation from community groups was not there. And then you have to understand, it's not CID CAG, Community Advisory Group, alone. It includes SODO. So there you have, in that segment, underrepresentation of the people who are impacted. Because there's a large population of non-English speakers who were not included and have not been included.
So what's ahead now? What are you going to do, and others that are finding all of this unacceptable?
Well, we have organized a website that was donated by United Chinese Americans. We're asking our call to action. Background information is there. It's Transit Equity for All, TEA. Brian Chow and I and Paul Wu are the co-founders. It's an umbrella group for individuals and organizations that want to help. So we have a petition. We are asking people to email their representatives on the Sound Transit Board. We are now focused on Snohomish County and Pierce County, asking community members who live there or who have friends or networks or who do business there to contact those representatives, because the final decision will be made by a vote of the Sound Transit Board. The city has just been wonderful. They have been given us the gift of recommending to Sound Transit that they take a 6 to 9 month pause to really look at community concerns, to resolve the unanswered questions, and to really up the ante on their community engagement.
So how soon would Sound Transit vote on this?
Supposedly the final vote will not be until 2023, about 18 months out. But we hope to ramp up support, to continue contacting representatives to let them know that we are living, breathing people that are being impacted, and our lives, our businesses, the elderly, non-English speakers need to be factored into these plans and what they're calling metrics instead of traffic, displaced businesses. Many displaced beloved businesses in CID are simply going to go out of business because they are location specific. If you, Sound Transit is going to pay relocation costs only. Well, if you relocate Ping's Dumpling House to, say, South Park, how much business are they going to get?
Right.
Will their customer base come with them?
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens to the legacy of the CID, you know.
Exactly. It's a hub where people from all around the world come. They go to the Panama Hotel to see the only surviving intact Japanese sento or bathhouse in North America. They come there also on book tours because it's the setting for Jamie Ford's hotel on the corner of Bitter and Sweet. They come for the Japanese American Museum that Jan Johnson, the owner, started, and she has preserved all of the belongings of the Japanese Americans who were sent off to incarceration. She put in a glass floor, and you could look down and see their trunks and possessions that they had expected to come back and pick up, but they never did. So all that is still there. It's there's been so much encroachment on CID, going back to I see it as another form of exclusion, except now it's legal. It's exclusion was in 1882. Then you had the Chinese expulsion in 1886, first from Tacoma, where their Chinatown was burned to the ground. And now they have this reconciliation park. Well, in 100 years, is that what we want Hing Park to be? When people come and they see a slab that says, oh, it's too bad the former Chinatown, Japantown, and Little Saigon Nexus was here, and they're gone now, but we memorialize them with this slab. One thing that has remained a mystery that I want to bring up here is why has Sound Transit decided to go through a National Register Chinatown Historic District that supposedly has protections of being on the National Register?
Can they do that?
There's one, believe it or not, I read that over 2,000 page DEIS, and I found an exemption in one of the appendices called rationale. And in the rationale, Sound Transit says there is an exception to historic district protections, and that intrusion of a project is allowed if it can be demonstrated that the project to do otherwise, instead of going through a National Historic Register district, is so costly, so burdensome in terms of construction, then they are allowed to go through a National Historic Register district. And this is a question that has been asked by other community members. Well, aren't we protected? We're a National Historic District. That is the exception. And it is my opinion, this is the reason why Sound Transit is emphasizing the cost difference, which is $500 million, and the inconvenience, the minimum 11-year construction that it would take to go down 4th Avenue. And the reason I believe that is because they had 3 public workshops where they invited the public to come in and hear what was going on. And I attended all 3. And I felt that one of those meetings was a waste of time, because they had said, come to the meeting. We are going to lay out our cost savings and refinements to these options. So I rounded up a bunch of friends, other community members, and we attended virtually. And guess what? There was no cost savings or refinements done on either 4th Avenue or 5th Avenue.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just seems to me what it always is. It's money. And they'll sacrifice the CID to save money, where they wouldn't have done that in white neighborhoods, right? So Betty, how can people get involved? How do they reach out to, what's the website for this group? How can they get involved?
It's called T for short, Transit Equity for All. And we have a petition there and our updates and calls to action. The website is transitequityforall.org.
All right.
Thank you.
Betty Lau, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And, I think people in the community need to thank you for being so passionate about this. And nobody likes going to meetings, but obviously you've gone and you have paid close attention. And this is an issue that it's going to heat up even more. And I see more, once again, that the CID is going to be fighting for its existence.
Unfortunately, yes. And I feel I'm just one person, and I am very, Brian Chow and I are really grateful for people who are jumping in to say, how can we help? One of the main people is I want to recognize is Frank Iragon, a longtime community volunteer and super fighter. He had 50 years ago organized the Kingdom and Stadium protests with the late Al Sugiyama that others came in and participated in. So we needed social media help, and the younger generation of former Dragon team runners, former Chinese girls drill team, girls, now women, former Chinese school students have all stepped up to say, I'm going to help. And this is a legacy for them and their grandchildren, and your descendants too, so that they have a Chinatown, a Japantown, a little Saigon to come to and say, my ancestors built this, and I have to keep this going so that we can all share in building community together and helping each other when crunch time comes. And now it's crunch time. So the more people who can jump in and help, the better it will be.
The thing about this too is that it's also the legacy of Seattle, and that's an important thing. It's not just the those that live in the CID. It's really involving the whole city, and people like to visit the CID for a lot of different reasons that you pointed out. So I think that this is an important issue for everybody in Seattle to really take a hard look at what's happening here. Betty, thank you so much for taking the time with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.